So good morning to all of you. So I think as we have heard since the beginning of the day, I think we live in very interesting times. As you've heard, AI is changing many things. I want to actually do a little bit of deeper dive and ask why is that happening right now? And there are two interesting things that have been happening that are actually driving all the changes that we're talking about. The first one is everything in the world is actually getting hyper-instrumented and hyper-connected. If you just look around, in fact, all of us have become very interesting sensors. Right? All of us are carrying around cell phones, mobile phones, and that's actually tracking virtually everything that you do. So it has become a brilliant source of actually sensing what people. When you look at IoT, it's essentially instrumenting everything in sort of factories or machines and so on, which is resulting in unprecedented level of visibility into any system, either human or otherwise. And then the second thing that's happening that is actually combining with everything getting hyper-instrumented and hyper-connected is this notion that I call dematerialization. Essentially, everything is becoming software-defined, right? No matter what you look at today, everything there is an app for it. And the moment you say there is an app for it, essentially it says that there is an API through which you can actually connect to that system and perform actions. Right? So when you think about these two things and you combine them, what you get is a tremendous opportunity to build highly intelligent systems. So if you think about it, the first one, the hyper-instrumentation, is really what many people talk about, sort of the digital revolution, whether it is social, mobile, IoT, and so on. It's creating, in a sense, a digital fabric or digital core. And then you're adding on to that core what I would call intelligent automation that is essentially resulting from everything becoming software defined. When you combine the digital core with intelligent automation, you get essentially an opportunity to transform or reimagine, as Paul talked about a little while ago, every aspect of business and business process. And that's exactly what is happening. It is allowing us to actually completely redefine, reimagine processes, make things extremely adaptive, personalized, and deliver completely different experiences. And there are many examples that you can look at, and actually you've heard many, so I will not spend any time on this. But the only thing I want to talk about here is the fact that there is different levels of intelligence that actually you incorporate in systems when you deal with them. From, if you just look at this example, which is probably one of the most famous examples, where we've gone from providing facts about maps to providing suggestions, once again because of resulting from hyper-instrumentation of people and cars, to performing tasks, taking responsibility. So different levels of sophistication, intelligence that sort of get added as you move from enabling a user to assisting to actually reimagining that particular activity completely. And there are many, many, many examples like this that are actually coming up, whether it is in agriculture, education, finance, legal, and so on. So while I think you've heard about some of these today, and you'll probably keep hearing about this as the day progresses, I want to actually do one step deeper and ask, what can we learn from what has been happening, and how can we actually determine what will it take to actually apply a lot of these technologies to enterprises? So I want to make two observations which are actually interesting. The first one is that while we have seen emergence of a large number of these applications that are transforming individual sort of specific activities, by and large, all of these solutions have been custom-built point solutions. So they take a very specific problem and they apply some of these technologies to solve that problem. In fact, in most of these solutions, you find that the knowledge about the domain and the system that it is controlling is actually heavily intermingled with a lot of the machine learning algorithms that the previous speaker talked about to actually make the system effective, right? So that's the first thing that you observe, which essentially means that building any of these cognitive systems or systems that are using AI technologies underneath it is very effort intensive and takes too long. Perhaps more importantly, Because of this tight interweaving of, if you will, domain knowledge with these technologies, as the technology environment changes or as the number of sensors change, it becomes very difficult to adapt some of the solutions that are actually being built today. So that's the first observation that is, I think, important to realize. The second observation I want to make is the fact that, interestingly, while we are talking about all these technologies actually transforming specific aspects of business and business operations, the way enterprises themselves are using this technology to run their own operations, whether it is technology operations or business operations, there is still a lot to be desired, right? So it's still very heavily manual. We rely heavily on a lot of people, tacit knowledge, intuition, and experience that people gather over a period of time to actually run most of our businesses. The reason why this is the case is that if you sort of combine the two observations, you realize why this is actually the reality today. So as today, in most enterprises, we have people are starting to use these technologies to do simple robotic tasks and in sort of point automation ways. And the reason why that is the case is because, as I said in the previous chart, it is extremely difficult to actually scale these technologies or implement them at large scale. If you look at any large enterprise today, we talk about hundreds, if not thousands, of different types of activities or tasks that are getting done. And to apply these technologies at that scale essentially becomes extremely difficult and extremely time-consuming. So how should we go about it? So I mean, we saw various charts that were showing AIs at the sort of the knee of the hockey curve. We are likely to see a rapid rise in adoption. What is going to actually drive that? So how can we essentially, what does it take to build cognitive solutions that can actually scale in an enterprise? To answer that question, I want to actually just talk about what are the types of activities most enterprises do today, and what is the type of intelligence that is going to be required to solve these problems. So if you look at this two-dimensional grid in terms of the types of activity, in terms of their complexity and the impact, but actually if you just look around and think about the type of activities each one of us does on a daily basis, you can broadly classify them into four categories. The first category of activities are procedural activities, which essentially requires somebody to simply follow a sequence of tasks or a sequence of procedures to perform a complex action. The next level of sophistication beyond that is what I would call investigative or exploratory activities, where how to perform that action in that particular context is actually not well defined. But you have to essentially understand the context and then explore and determine essentially the type of actions that will actually lead to a problem resolution or a problem solution. The next one higher up in complexity is analytical activities, which are basically activities that involve looking at large volumes of historical data, finding trends, patterns from that information, and then deriving insights about what is normal, what is abnormal trends, being able to do forecasting, clustering, many things that you heard from the previous speakers, to derive insights that essentially drive continuous optimization. And then the last one are planning activities that are basically requiring you to answer two types of questions, what I would call what-if questions and if-what questions. So what-if questions are what happens to your enterprise, to your business, to your environment, to your business process if you introduce a certain change.